I have absolutely no idea why I got myself into this. So I asked you guys if you had any particular videos that you wanted me to make or anything that you wanted me to talk about, and it so happens that a lot of you guys messaged me and asked me to do a video on whether you need dysphoria to be trans. Very, very controversial topic that people within the community have been fighting over for ages, and it seems that there is no right way to even discuss this, because people get very, very aggressive when it comes to that topic, on both sides. So I was like, making a video on this is kind of like jumping into a lion's den. You're gonna get roasted for it. So because there seems to be a huge demand for this, I'm not only going to share my personal opinion, but we're going to try to look at this discussion as a whole, how it even started, and why it is such a huge issue within the community. Because I think the key as to why people have such an issue with it is that people on either side, the ones that say yes you need dysphoria and the ones who say no you don't need dysphoria, feel it validated by the other side and feel like they are attacked, and that is never a good basis for any discussion. So before I start this video, I just want to put a disclaimer on it and say that no matter what I say in this video and no matter what my personal opinion might be, it is never ever my intention to invalidate anyone out there. My opinion is based on my personal experience and what I have figured out for myself, but that doesn't mean that I can't be wrong. And generally, I think no matter if you think that you need dysphoria to be trans or not, it is always important to still respect everyone in this community and let everyone be whatever they are and whatever they identify as. After you've finished watching this video, feel free to leave a comment with your personal opinion on this. I just ask one thing of you, please, if you intend to comment, watch this video until the end, because I'm going to try to really untangle all of this and look at the different points of views and just try to give you a complete as it can be view on this. So watch until the end and then you can comment with your opinion, and that's totally fine. Before I started this video, I posted polls on Instagram and also YouTube asking you guys what you think, because I just wanted to know beforehand what people within the community were really thinking. Both polls kind of showed the same result, with about 60% of people saying that you need dysphoria in order to be trans, and about 40% saying that you don't need dysphoria. A lot of people also commented and messaged me privately elaborating their opinion and why they feel this way. And after listening to all of those different opinions and really trying to reflect upon all of that, I came to a, I think, pretty interesting conclusion, which is my personal conclusion, might not be right, but for me kind of made sense. And that is, I actually think that both sides are right. And I know you're probably going to say, Tom, that won't work. It's a yes or no question. There is no way that both can be right. But I actually think that works, because from what I've gathered, the people who say yes, you do need dysphoria, seem to have a different definition for the word dysphoria than the people who say, no, you don't need dysphoria. So if those two sides have different definitions for dysphoria, it's impossible for them to find common ground to discuss on, because they are both talking about two entirely different things. It's kind of like with a coin, you know? With a coin I have tails and heads. And if I put it like this, the people on this side will say tails, and the people on this side will say heads, and both will be right, because they are actually looking at two different things. And I think that's the case with this whole discussion. So to start this off, we need to define what gender dysphoria even is. I'm going to give you the official definition. Gender dysphoria is the condition of feeling one's emotional and psychological identity to be different from one's biological sex. So that's the official definition of dysphoria. Now there are different types of dysphoria. There's body dysphoria, which means anything concerning your body that makes you feel bad. For example, your chest, your hips, your genitals, your height, if you have a feminine face, all of that is body dysphoria. And then there's another type of dysphoria, which is called social dysphoria. It doesn't have anything to do with your body itself, but rather with the role that society has put you in and feeling uncomfortable with that. That includes, for example, if people use your dead name or wrong pronouns, or tell you, well, you're such a pretty girl, or have you play sports on the girls' team, having to wear female clothing, all of which has to do with kind of the way you are perceived by others and the gender role that you are supposed to play. All of that, if that makes you uncomfortable in any way, is social dysphoria, which is a form of dysphoria. So these are the two main types of dysphoria. So this means that dysphoria is actually a feeling that tells you that the gender you were assigned at birth is not 100% right for you. It doesn't have to be 100% wrong, whether you are on the other side of the gender spectrum or somewhere in between. All people who feel like they are not 100% comfortable with their gender assigned at birth fall under that transgender umbrella. That doesn't mean that all of those people have to want to medically transition or even change anything about their appearance. Some people in this community believe that dysphoria strictly means body dysphoria. And if you don't have body dysphoria, if you are not totally uncomfortable with your body and hate your body and want to change it and want to medically transition, that you are not actually trans, which in my opinion is totally wrong. Because not every trans person has to hate themselves and hate their bodies. Some trans people actually find ways to cope with their bodies in a very positive way, or even accept their bodies and love their bodies, which is totally fine, and it's actually a great thing. So there are trans people who do not hate their bodies, but instead, for example, are really uncomfortable when they are addressed with the wrong pronouns, or forced to wear female clothing, or whatever it is that makes them feel uncomfortable. And things like that are dysphoria as well. I personally did have a bit of body dysphoria as well, but my body dysphoria was way, way less than my social dysphoria. I had way more problems with people dead-naming me, calling me the wrong pronouns. The main reason why I had top surgery was not that I totally hated my chest for myself. I didn't wear a binder when I was at home, and it didn't bother me that much. It started bothering me whenever I left the house. I couldn't leave the house without a binder because, due to my chest looking female, people outside would then automatically classify me and see me as female. So actually a huge part of my wanting to get top surgery was related to social dysphoria and not so much body dysphoria in itself. And my body dysphoria happened because of the social dysphoria and people thinking I was female because of my body. So if you talk about dysphoria and include social dysphoria in the picture, you get an entirely different story because you are broadening the definition of dysphoria. So my personal definition of dysphoria is a feeling that tells you that your gender assigned at birth is not 100% right for you. That doesn't mean that you have to have depression and anxiety and self-hatred and feel generally totally bad all the time. It's just a feeling that sometimes may be slightly uncomfortable when you're in situations where you're seen as the wrong gender. Just that feeling of, it's not really right for me, is what I already classify as dysphoria. So by my personal definition of dysphoria being that feeling, it's a little thing in the back of your mind that informs you about the fact that your gender is probably not what you were assigned at birth, that feeling, I think, is required in order to be trans. Why do I think that? Because if you were 100% happy with your birth gender, then why would you even question it? You know, if you question your gender and feel like, well, I may be trans, you have some feeling inside of you telling you that. And by that definition, yes, I believe that you need at least some amount of dysphoria. It doesn't have to be totally strong. It doesn't have to, make your life miserable all the time. There is also an aspect of gender euphoria. For example, if someone addresses you by your chosen pronouns and you feel really, really happy about it, then that's gender euphoria. But I think that euphoria and dysphoria always go kind of hand in hand, because if you are really, really happy with being addressed with your right pronouns or your chosen pronouns, if someone doesn't do that, you may feel at least slightly disappointed, I think. I did not wear a binder for a very, very long time, and it didn't bother me much. At least I didn't feel like it bothered me. And then I got my first binder and I put it on, and I had this huge wave of gender euphoria, looking in the mirror and suddenly feeling like, wow, this is like me. And from that moment on, whenever I was not wearing a binder, I hated looking at myself in the mirror. I got dysphoria, which was kind of caused by that euphoria that I had. I suppose that I had dysphoria before I put on my first binder, but I just didn't realize because I'd suppressed it. And I didn't know that there was another way that I could look way better or way more like myself. And at that very moment where I realized what I could look like wearing a binder, I got dysphoria whenever I didn't wear it. So why are there so many people out there who claim that they don't have dysphoria? First of all, maybe they really think that dysphoria means strictly body dysphoria. This belief may actually cause some people to feel invalidated or not trans enough. I've talked to people before who asked me, do I think I'm really trans because I don't have any body dysphoria? I don't hate my chest, I don't hate my body. Am I really trans? Some people may also repress their dysphoria. It is a coping mechanism. Some people manage to repress their negative feelings to a point where they don't really notice them as much anymore. They may notice them enough to feel slightly uncomfortable and to give them that feeling that they are trans, but the feelings still are so repressed that they don't cause them to feel really bad about themselves. Those feelings may still be there, but are beneath the surface, and they don't really realize it. And the third reason might be, even though dysphoria is the official term for that feeling, some people just don't use that term. Some people don't say, I have dysphoria, but they say, well, I just feel slightly uncomfortable with my gender, which is basically the same thing. They just use different words for it, but they mean the same feeling, meaning that they still have it, but they just don't call it that way. The trans community seems to be fixated on that particular word, and you have to call it dysphoria. It's not enough if you just say, well, I feel uncomfortable with my gender. No, you have to call it dysphoria, and if you don't call it that particular word, you're not valid. But why is that? Well, I think there actually is a reason for it. Because gender dysphoria is the official diagnosis that you get when you're trans. Well, I don't know how it works in the US, but here in Austria, where I live, as well as in most other countries in Europe, as far as I know, in order to medically transition, in order to be eligible for HRT or surgeries, you need a letter from various doctors, therapists, psychologists, diagnosing you with the official diagnosis that is gender dysphoria. And if you don't have a letter saying that person has gender dysphoria, you will not be able to transition. So no matter what you call your feeling yourself, your doctor will call it dysphoria, and you will officially have dysphoria. And I think that is another key as to why we are even discussing this and fighting about this. Because people feel like, well, if dysphoria is the official diagnosis for being trans, how can you be trans if you say that you don't have that diagnosis? And that is where gatekeeping comes in. Because you see, there are trans people who, to be fair, make the majority of the trans community, who do openly suffer, and I mean really suffer from dysphoria, who really have a huge and obvious problem with their bodies and need a medical transition in order to not die. And that includes a lot of pain, sometimes a lot of self-hatred, and just not being able to cope with yourself. And considering that amount of suffering, I can kind of see, why they would feel a little invalidated when they encounter a person who says, well, I'm trans, but I don't feel dysphoria. I don't feel uncomfortable with myself. And I'm not saying that it's right to discredit a person who says that or feels that way. But I can understand that those people who go through a lot of pain may then feel like, well, the people who claim that they don't have dysphoria and don't have these negative feelings but still claim that they are trans make being trans look so unproblematic. Make it look so easy, like it's basically a piece of cake. And those people who have gone through all this pain may feel like their suffering is not being recognized anymore. And another thing that some people are getting concerned about, and just to make it clear, this is not necessarily my own personal opinion. I'm just trying to look at the whole thing from the different points of view. So there is a growing number of people within the community who are feeling concerned about what is nowadays called trans trending. Now that is another huge topic that could make at least 5 videos on just that topic, and I don't want to get into it a lot now because it's another very controversial thing, but I have to mention it now for context. Because hypothetically speaking, what would happen if anyone who didn't have dysphoria could just claim to be trans? Would then people who aren't really trans claim to be trans? That's the question. I mean, personally, I feel like who would want that? Who would want to go through the stress of coming out, being discriminated against, maybe going through changes that you can never reverse? Still, a lot of people are coming out as trans, probably due to it being more present in the media and more people just realizing that they are trans. But just combine that, there is this huge explosion of transness right now. So many teenagers and young people are suddenly trans. And now throw in that, well, you don't need dysphoria to be trans, and you can probably see the problem that some people might have. Because they are now scared of a wave of teenagers who just claim to be trans, who may not even want to go through a transition, but use different name and pronouns in order to get attention and just jump on that trend, whatever that means. And what people fear now is that the community as a whole is going to be invalidated by those trans trenders, because people on the outside will see, well, every second teenager nowadays is trans, so it's probably a trend, and we're not going to take transgender people seriously anymore. And that is the fear. I'm not saying that those people are right. I'm just saying that that is the fear, and it's a very real fear. Is it justified in any way? Well, the honest answer is we don't know. We cannot look into every single person's head who claims that they are trans. Your identity is in your head. No one else can tell you whether you are right or not, or lying or not. And yes, it is definitely possible that there are some people out there who are maybe going through puberty and trying to get attention, and some of their friends are maybe LGBT, and they just want to be different or be something special, and then they claim that they are trans. I don't think that that's the majority of trans people. Not at all. I think that whenever someone tells you that they are trans, this is a very serious issue, and you should take that person seriously and respect them. The thing is, we cannot know whether there's not 1 or 2 people out there who just claim to be trans even though they know they're not. But that doesn't give us the right to invalidate anyone who is not stereotypically trans, whatever that means, or who doesn't use the word dysphoria to describe their feelings. The identity of another human being is no one's business but that person's. And whatever you may think about them, you always have to give them the benefit of the doubt and still respect them and use their chosen name and pronouns and so on. Because there is not a monitor that a doctor can just hook you up to, and that monitor will tell you trans, not trans. And no one can measure your degree of dysphoria. Identity is purely based on feelings, and no one can prove or disprove anyone else's identity. So what all of this huge thing is coming down to, for me, is people know that they are trans because something inside of them just tells them. And I call that something, however it feels for the individual, may be different for every person, but that feeling is what I call dysphoria. Like I said before, it doesn't have to be full-blown anxiety or depression or anything that makes you want to kill yourself. It just has to be that little something. And I believe that every trans person has that, even if they don't always recognize it, even if they don't feel uncomfortable necessarily. If you feel that you would feel more comfortable living in a different gender than the one you were assigned at birth, you are, in my eyes, trans. And you don't need to put a certain label on your feelings. You don't personally need to label them as dysphoria. Just know that if you want to medically transition and you have to go to a therapist and get a diagnosis, you will have dysphoria as your diagnosis. Personally, I think that the community should not tear itself apart over words and definitions so much. No matter how you look at it, it makes both sides feel invalidated. And that is not something that we should feel within this community. This community is supposed to be a home, a place that you can go to where you meet other people who feel like you, who go through similar challenges. We should not start verbally killing each other over words, because we've got so many bigger problems than that. In the end, it is every person's own responsibility to figure out who they are and how they want to live. And no other person has the right to tell you whether you are this or that or how you should lead your life. So I guess this has been a very long, rambling video, which was probably kind of confusing. I tried to look at all the points of views. I can kind of understand both sides, where they are coming from, and I don't think that there are good guys and bad guys in this, except for true scum, which are people who really think that you need body dysphoria in order to be trans, and if you don't have that, you're not trans. That is the only way that you can truly invalidate anyone, I think. But there are many people who come off as that, but it's just a huge misunderstanding and they don't mean it that way. So yeah, thank you for watching this and finishing it. If you want to share your personal opinions, just leave a comment down below. Try not to attack anyone on a personal level. It'd be nice if you didn't attack me on a personal level. It'd be just as nice if you didn't attack each other in the comments, because I think we've had enough of that. And we should all just try to live together in a civilized manner. Having said that, I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon. Till next time, all the best, and bye.